Okay.
So, do you remember the title of the episode?
I do. I have it written down. It is, in fact, A Quality of Mercy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the finale of Season 1 of Strange New Worlds, the episode that unites... And obviously, spoiler warnings if you've not watched the episode. Why are you watching this if you've not watched the episode? Come on, get your
You've had
priorities straight,
2
please.
weeks at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah, we give you an extra cooling off point.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Unless you're from the United Kingdom and you haven't already got the episode yet because it's not on Paramount Plus.
Don't mind our accents. We are from somewhere else.
Yes, we're from Tennessee. Anyway, this is episode 10, A Quality of Mercy, the episode that brings Pike full circle from the season premiere. This was interesting. I think, first off, a few of us were slightly annoyed. Okay, there's Screen Actors Guild things all round, and Big, you mentioned this in the pre-show.
Yeah.
We have to say, yeah, certain people in episodes, you need to credit them, but could they have just stopped and not let us see Paul Wesley's name in the credits?
Yeah.
Would it have killed them?
No, I mean, well, because there's, I mean, I'm not an actor, but I had enough contact with this stuff that, pay scales and, how you're compensated for your work and all of that. I think the credits play a part of that, and there are rules and unions to navigate to, you have to do that, because I know, George Lucas paid a pretty hefty fine for not having opening credits in the Star Wars movies because of, things like that. So I understand why you really need to do it, because it's like, why cost yourself money? But yeah, preserving the fact that Kirk is going to show up in this episode would have been nice.
Well, it's also especially glaring because I don't know if you guys remember, but Spock and Mock, right? It's 15 minutes into the episode we get the opening credits. Could you not have just waited until the first Kirk scene or the mention of the name Kirk and then gone Paul Wesley? That would have been a perfectly good stinger for your opening credits thing. Like, I understand that you want to place it at a place where it's like most optimal for impact, a little bit of a breath for a thing, but at some point, if you want to, because I got spoiled, unfortunately, before I even saw that. I had the misfortune to click on YouTube, just to click on it, and it was in my recommended videos, just straight up spoilers, like, thanks, so right in the thumbnail and in the title. I had no way of avoiding it, thank you. But for people who had managed to avoid that, and then it's just like, oh, thanks, opening credits. And the one I think of the most is, what is it, A Heart of Stone from DS9 Season 2 or 3, where it's the female founder, and she's pretending to be Kira the entire episode, and they go to the effort of concealing her name in the end credits and not the opening ones, even though she would be a guest star, because we want to preserve the secret. Because if you get to the 40-minute mark and you haven't seen the female founder, you start going, okay, so she's playing one of the other characters.
Yeah.
But, as you say, it's one of these things where you can't get around it. I just feel like someone should have, in the editing room, been like, let's put the intro.movie.wav somewhere else in the editing process,
Yeah. So, I mean, this comes, like you say, it comes at a point where maybe they should have waited, but it does already come after the big reveal. So Pike, goes into his office, and all of a sudden there's another person in his room, and there is old Pike wearing the monster maroons, wearing the wrath. Like, that was the moment I was watching it, and my jaw just dropped. Like, they actually recreated that uniform. I think we need to have a little spell. Like, we're going to do our own show on Star Trek fashion, but we need to have a little chat about how they've updated this version of the Wrath of Khan uniforms. And what do you guys think?
Well, I think it's consistent with some of the reimaginings that they've done of other things throughout the season. I think most specifically the command wrap that Pike wore in Spock and Mock, where it's paying homage to, it's recognizable as the thing that it's referencing, but it's different. It's like a little more, for lack of a better word, like kind of vinyl-y, like the shoulders.
Yeah, there seems to be that kind of
stiffer, brighter, kind of reflective.
It's the same Delta effect they've got going for everyone else's uniforms, which I believe is a 3D printed effect. And I feel like it's a compromise because they want to go, hey, older fans, you immediately know what this is and what this implies, right?
Yeah.
That implies not only is this guy legit because he's wearing an actual uniform that you recognize, but you know roughly the time period that that's set in. So the fact that he's coming this far back and you already have an existing TOS and a movie uniform existing, something's gone wrong. Yeah. But you also want to signal to the casual viewer who does not recognize that uniform. Maybe they've seen like a poster or whatever, but they look at that uniform and then they look at the Strange New Worlds outfit that Pike is wearing, which is just a slightly updated TOS thing. But they see the consistency in the vinyling of the shoulders and like, these are from the same lineage, but that one is way more militaristic because the Monster Maroon is so much more of a military uniform. It has more of that pomp, more of that circumstance. Compared to almost any of the other like Star Trek uniforms, it is the most immediately identifiable as a military uniform.
And like most,
so it does a really good job of.
Sorry, like most things with that era of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry hated it.
Yes, he did. He absolutely loathed that. Yeah. But it's just a really nice visual shorthand, even if you aren't familiar with what that uniform actually means. To go, okay, this is like a very different Pike from a different time period.
Well, and if you are, like you say, if you are familiar with that, then that is a whole lot of visual storytelling and visual shorthand that without a single line of dialogue tells a whole lot about what has happened. So
it's one of those, because there's this thing in, especially in this era of like, legacy prestige shows, which is all like updates and reboots and pre-makes and whatever. But this is like a really good example of taking something from your history and then using it to tell a story within 3 seconds. Otherwise, there would have been a lot of like he says, a war with the Romulans, and you can immediately like kind of work out what's going on. Like he says after anyway, like after the Pike has had his vision, but it immediately implies something, and it does a lot of filling in the gap. My problems with it, I don't mind the deltaing so much because it makes it consistent with the Strange New Worlds outfit. That's fine. My problem was with what I think might actually just be slightly faulty tailoring. Because if you look at where the flap is meant to open and the band, it's actually way lower on the uniform than it's meant to be,
doesn't it?
And if you look at the concept art, which they've released on Twitter, it is in the correct Wrath of Khan thing where it's meant to be more up here. So it looks like someone who, in the tailoring department, maybe slightly messed up, or the band was a little bit thin, or it wasn't fitted quite correctly, and it's hanging a little bit low, so it looks a little bit off. That being said, the fact that it is a proper legit thing that they made, and it's not just a cosplay outfit, like they did do diligence.
It looks good. It looks really good on Pike. And the one thing I noticed as well, it's this is old Pike. This is Pike, probably 7 to 20 years in the future. Obviously, Anson Mount hasn't been plied with the kind of TNG makeup they used to do to make people old by like putting loads of plaster on them and then making them hunch over, going, "Oh, the old admiral." Poor DeForest Kelly in the opening of Encounter at Farpoint. But they do enough with the makeup and enough with like just shaping his hair, and he sort of Anson Mount sort of acting. He acts a little bit older, a little bit wiser to make you think like, okay, this is a more experienced, aged Pike, even though Pike's not exactly young in Strange New Worlds. He's already an experienced captain with a few greys in his hair. Like this is an even more older one.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's like they, like you say, they did a minimal amount of aging him up and just trusted Anson Mount's acting ability to just make up the difference and sell it to where. And I had read something where Anson Mount was talking about his performance in that scene, and he was talking about, people that are in their 70s or in their 80s, they don't feel like they're 70 or 80. They still feel like they're 35 or whatever. They just, things don't move quite as easily as they used to, and your voice changes a little bit. And it's like, and that's what that performance is and reads to me. And it's wonderful because it doesn't over present itself. It doesn't make it part of the scene like Admiral Mark Jameson is in that.
That's the worst.
It's like it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It just is, and you accept it, and then you move on to the plot. So
absolutely, and I feel like a big part of it is, and we're talking about like the show don't tell that we've talked about a lot in Strange New Worlds about the brevity of the storytelling, and it's like in terms of Pike's characterization in his older form, there is an almost absolute absence of humor. Like he will make a funny line, like he'll give a glib remark to his like younger self, but he doesn't smile. There's just like his face barely moves. He's just like,
there's a
yeah,
little
no, I am
smirk
still
at
the
the
same
end.
person.
When you kind of go, when there's someone
Yeah,
approaching the door, he
exactly.
goes, "Oh yeah," and then there's a little smirk, and then he does
Well,
that.
because at that point in his life, the only humor he has left is gallows humor.
Yeah.
And it's just like a nice way of not only differentiating him as older, because he just like he can't be walking all around and being the dad to the ship and being like clapping his tongues at people. He is a
Which he does
admiral
again.
with a lot more responsibility.
He does
it
this episode. I want to see those tongs on the bridge. I want to see them like, Lieutenant will take us. Tick, tick, tick. Come on, get engaged.
Because it's a really nice like acting shorthand for not just he comes from a bad future and it's a really bad future from the implication, but it's also just like, yeah, I believe he's older because he's having to take on more responsibility and he has less to like laugh about. And humor is such an essential part of what this, especially this characterization of Pike, is reliant upon, that you notice it immediately when it's not there. And sort of trailing into that, I really appreciate when Trek shows, and Trek does it a lot. There's like a staple of like 30 different episode types that you clock in the first 5 minutes. You're like, oh, we're in one of these episodes. Good, I like this episode. But the characters are aware of it. And it's when he's talking to his older self, and he's like, I've been around the block a few times, and I know not to instantly trust someone who's wearing my face. And Admiral Pike is like, yeah, I know, surnames a lot. And it's like, oh, you're pulling out the deep cut? He's like, it's what I would say if I had to get my younger self to trust me.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, I do like that. That was just like the embarrassing. Like it's like, oh yeah, he's so like it's not a tragic backstory everyone wants. I love they sort of add that a bit of levity in there because they're like, yeah, the rest of the episode's dark as fuck. But
you got to have the moments.
Well, it's the kind of the same thing as the the quiche at the beginning of the last episode. The dinner scene where everybody is having a good time. Just that little bit of levity before the darkness.
Yes,
well, it's
absolutely.
like that. It's the same thing of, watching old TNG episodes or something like that. It's like where if it starts light, it's going to be heavy. If it starts heavy, it's going to be light.
You need the contrast, absolutely. Yeah. So we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but I feel like we kind of the essential sort of there's two parts to this episode. I feel like there's obviously the case of my favorite type of trope, which is the what if, like if you put this, because this is a question that has been raging since at least the 1980s, right? Who is the best captain? And back then it was Kirk or Picard, then it became Kirk, Picard, or Janeway, Cisco, and now it's
Pike.
Going at that question.
It's just not even a question.
This takes that question and asks the question, what's the mission? And the answer to this question is
actually. Yeah.
Because it's a case of Pike is an amazing captain. He is an incredible leader of men. He's a wonderful tactician. He's an inspiring presence. He's smart. He's canny. He's very diplomatic. But one thing he is not, and there's something I actually really appreciate from his characterization in Discovery Season 2, is he is not a soldier. It's a really important part of his characterization in Discovery Season 2 that he and his crew missed out on the Klingon War, and he feels guilty about that he didn't do his part. And he, in Discovery Season 2, he has to overperform and over-stress. No, I would have done my part if I was there, and it killed me that I wasn't. And some of that comes forward into this episode, where it's about how balancing Pike the diplomat versus Kirk, who we've seen go through this same series of events, versus Coke, who he described himself as a soldier, not a diplomat. And that tension is really important, especially in a TOS era captain. And so, you've got that aspect of the episode. And then there was something that I kind of realized after talking about stuff with you, Idol, which is that this existential problem that Pike is dealing with of who lives and who dies, and having the knowledge but not the ability, or having the ability but having the knowledge to not only is it since Discovery Season 2 has Pike been wrestling with that, but it actually dates all the way back to the cage, where that's the reason why he's so depressed and why he has the conversation with Boyce. He literally says, I'm tired of making decisions about who lives and who dies and how much that exhausts him. And then they clearly went back to that episode and said, what if we take this
So
and then
good.
just blow it out and examine it 10 different ways and make it a essential part of his character being about sacrifice? And I feel like that's a
Yeah.
really strong... Like, they pay so much homage to the Cage and the Menagerie, a few little bits of characterization. We do have a Pike from the original series. And it's like, I love how they've melded it all together in this subtle way.
So not just that. I mean, they go back to episode 1 of Strange New Worlds. Like one of the I found the quote. I rewatched episode 1 because at some point we're going to do a season 1 recap. So I thought I'll go back and watch episode 1. I'll go through again. And one thing stood out to me, and there was a piece of writing that happened between Pike and Spock where Pike's talking about his experience with reliving the past. And bear in mind this has now happened to Pike twice. He's relived the past. He's now relived a future. And each time it's affected him a certain way. But a line that came from Pike was, "Knowledge is one thing, Spock, but I experienced it. How will it live in me? Will it make me hesitant, cautious, not cautious enough? I'm already second-guessing myself." And that's the last thing a captain can afford. And I listened to that line and I thought, holy shit, that's from episode 10. That could be applicable to episode 10 as well. Like, coming full circle from, like, arc to arc, adding so much depth to this character. Like, I just expected Anson Mount to come out and be like, Discovery Season 2 and just be like, I'm cool, we're going to do cool things, but like, I wasn't ready for this kind of depth to a character. Like, holy shit, they knocked it out of the park. If this doesn't win awards for that kind of character development, what can? Like, it's crazy.
Well, it can't. It's just a dopey sci-fi show, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean,
genre television has never had anything substantive to say about anything.
Of course.
So this is yesterday's Enterprise cross balance of terror.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It wasn't until because I didn't watch any of the previews. It wasn't until we got into where he'd done the time jump and he was speaking to Ortega, and you see the shot of the outpost being destroyed near Romulan space, and stupid me for not realizing this sooner. But that was the moment I went, oh shit, are they reliving Balance of Terror? And then he went to speak to Spock and like, oh, it's 7 years in the future. I went, I can't believe they're doing this. This is crazy. Like, I was not for a season finale. Wow.
So what do you guys think about that choice? This being the episode that they choose to illustrate this?
I think it's inspired, honestly, because
it's really good. Yeah, it's
because like I was talking with Shy about this, like our frequent collaborator and friend Shyborn. He was saying, "Oh, Balance of Terror is one of my favorite TOS episodes, and I'm kind of sad they got rid of the submarine drama." And to a degree, they have. But what they have instead done is blow out the Cold War overtones of TOS, made it way more overt, and made it more about not just the balance of terror, but what happens when the balance completely goes wrong. You big?
Well, it's just because I totally agree, and I think that basically from the TOS era is the only choice that can really do that, because that is the only episode that I can really think of where everything can hang in the balance. Yeah. Where the consequences are galaxy wide affecting and showing just what one little change can do that can be completely disastrous and just like a full left turn in your future. So yeah.
So what you're saying is they should have picked the one with the giant space amoeba. That was that was the other choice.
Yeah, no. Pike would have let Spock stay on the Paradise planet. That's what it was. Just something that's clearly
you get your rocks off with the Layla Cologne.
Yeah.
I also really appreciate it because if you look at TOS season 1, I'm going off of the Wikipedia order. I understand that obviously there's a different order depending on production and showing and stuff like that.
Not too far different. I think it's just the opening episodes are there, but
yeah. So you've got the Man Trap, relatively small stakes. Charlie X, kind of, but it was relatively easy to contain because the Thasians were always going to take care of that. Where No Man Has Gone Before, I don't know, with how Ortegas is characterized in this episode, I always wonder if that happened with someone else. The Enemy Within, that's incredibly small stakes. Mud's Women,
not for Shatner,
that's not exactly. Mud's Women, not exactly galaxy level. What Are Little Girls Made Of? Not exactly. No. Miri, definitely not. Dagger of the Mind, no.
Yeah.
The Corbinite Maneuver, no. Menagerie didn't even happen.
Yeah. The
The
Menagerie
Conscience of the King, that's an intensely Kirk episode, so I imagine that never even happened.
Yeah.
It's only when you get to Balance of Terror that something is like, no, this is a threat to the entire Federation, and this is the first time you get a sense of not just the Enterprise is it on its own out here in the big old wild world, in the Wild West, charting the unstarted thing. It is part of a greater entity, and that entity is under threat. So taking that episode is, like you say, it's kind of the only choice, and it's the first time that Spock, for example, would have been in danger of dying or being completely dismembered, as it were.
Yeah, it was definitely a juxtaposition between the two command styles, and like we said earlier, in Touchpoint, now this is a Pike. This is the Balance of Terror is kind of a backdrop to Pike's dilemma. Really, this is the sort of like epitome of his arc. But I like, and we'll get onto Paul Wesley as Kirk very soon, because I think we've all got a lot to say about him. But this is definitely the not just sort of the what if Pike was there. This is more like the what if Pike was there and also had Kirk's viewpoint, and what would it be like to have the juxtaposition between the two captains at that point? How would they differ over their styles? And we kind of got that little what if scenario happen out with Paul Wesley's Kirk, being the counter to Pike at that situation.
Well, yeah. So as the episode as written, it's like, do you need Kirk there because you need Kirk's perspective and you need Kirk's presence to make the story work? Not necessarily.
No.
What you need Kirk there for is you need the absolute, you cannot miss it, stark reminder that you, Pike, are what is different about the scenario, and your decisions versus what Kirk's decisions would be in that moment are what the difference is. And nothing hammers that home better than having Kirk literally over your shoulder making different decisions than he would have made in that situation, and cutting to Kirk being like, I don't think I would have done that. Just over and over again, to just hammer that home over and over.
But the best thing was Pike never shut him out. He never shut him down. Even the point when Kirk's on the mining ships, he said secure channel to Captain Kirk. Like, he gave him absolute deference and respect. Like, he never got bitchy about it. He never went, this is my ship, my command.
They got a little bit frosty, but only in the kind of respect where it's like Kirk is coming off of a heated moment where he just lost his ship. God knows how many of his crew died. He's like feeling a bit bruised ego because he underestimated the Romulan commander. And it's like, they absolutely would get their hackles up, because they are both just like, they take this incredibly seriously. But otherwise, sorry.
Well, and the other smart thing that they did was all of Pike's decisions are not bad decisions. They're not unintelligent decisions. It's like, you could absolutely see like Captain Picard making almost all the same choices that are made throughout this episode. It's just the consequences of those decisions are bad. And it's what the real theme of it is like, someone can be a great leader, a great captain, be a great commander of your situation, but just be the wrong one for that time, for that moment.
Would you even say that it is possible to make no mistakes and still lose?
That is not a weakness.
Yeah, I mean,
it is life.
It's not often you see the commanding officer of Starship and the leader of the show, say Janeway, Sisko, Picard, whoever, being in command of something. Okay, maybe Archer's the exception to this rule, but being in command of a situation and making what he thinks is all the right choices, and the audience thinks all the right choices, but then ends up in failure. Like, it sometimes doesn't all work out, and I think that's and they've done it in a very clever way, and that they've done it in a kind of what if or turn priest, and you can't show your lead character being weak. It's a very 60s attitude, but kind of still applies for the day. The good guy has to win at the end of the day, but no one won in this scenario, and that's very refreshing.
Well,
we've talked before about inversions of things, and this is the inversion of It's a Wonderful Life. It's like it's a wonderful Pike. It's like, what would life be like if you weren't here? It would be better. You should die.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, it's not quite like that, but you're not wrong.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct point. because, like you say, it's a case of Kirk is literally sitting there, and he is making the choices that we know work from Balance of Terror. But say you're a completely fresh viewer of Star Trek, like of Strange New Worlds, that got into you, right? And you don't know what happens in Balance of Terror. This is just like a weird flash forward to like maybe you don't even know what a Romulan is, right? And say you don't have Kirk there, and you don't know. Like, everyone knows who Kirk is, so you know that you can take him seriously. But if he weren't there and he weren't making decisions, and they were being backed up by Spock, you know, you'd be like, well, how could Pike have won? This was a no-win scenario. There was no way he could have avoided this. But the fact that you, as the viewer, are told by Kirk, the character, and by the meta-narrative of everyone having seen TOS, at least one episode of TOS at some point in their life, you know that they makes the wrong decisions. And it's like, what happens when you put a captain who is more TNG era in sensibility into a TOS situation? Guess what? They fail. Because you cannot afford to show weakness in front of at least these Romulans. And these Romulans are amazing, both in terms of characterization, in terms of visual design, in terms of costuming,
really
in terms of acting and writing. Because they do a really good job here of weaving in and out of Balance of Terror dialogue and making it sound completely naturalistic. Like, every now and then, it's like direct quote, new dialogue, direct quote, new dialogue. And you just go back and forth. And it's like these are the same notes, but played in a different sequence with new ones in between.
I think we can forgive the fact it's not James Frayne as the other Romulan commander, which would have been so good if they'd done that. But the guy that played him was really good. But Stars, tell us about what made me really laugh. When we were just watching the show just now, the YouTube comment, because I was saying just like, when he says to Pike, like, another reality, you and I could have been friends, I'm thinking, did he just say that to anyone he meets? And please.
Yeah, I was looking at the YouTube comments for his like Death in Strange New Worlds, and someone says, in some reality, that guy will find a friend.
It's gonna work. That line will work sometime. Like, and some sergeant captain will be like, "Well, come on over. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's chat about this."
Well, the other thing is like, and I don't remember who made the observation when we watched it, that seemed like a line that he says a lot. That I wish we had not met in this way, and it made me think it's like maybe that's his line that he had before dusting somebody. It's like, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? Or like and I shall rain down with big, So that.
And meanwhile, the guy on the other side of the cashew is asking him to pay for his 4 cans of Stella's just like, just give me $10, please. Like,
sir, this is
a 10 quid. Like, instead of reality, you and I could have been friends. Like, yeah, but we're not, and I need my money. Anyway, sorry, we digress.
Where's my Quatloons, man?
Yeah.
Okay, so which because there were a lot of, homages, glow ups, whatever term you want to use for TOS elements. It's like, to me, like the two that may have worked the best out of this entire season are, one, the update on the EV suits, because it's a lot of that, and two, maybe just the update of the Romulan TOS look, because
those costumes are
because
beautiful.
It takes everything that you loved about that look. If you loved it, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I love it.
I love it.
And brought it forward and made it modern and believable in the way that you could absolutely take TOS elements and make them not believable now.
Yeah.
And so it was just immaculate.
I really like the starship design update. Like, obviously they kept the bird of the prey the same. There's not much you can do much more with that, to be fair. But when the fleet warped in,
it's amazing as is.
Yeah, exactly. When the fleet warped in, they were. I looked at them and went, yeah, that's what a TOS Romulan fleet would look like. Very sort of. It wasn't like the copy paste saying he fleet from Picard, and it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to get some Star Trek Online assets from Picard as well. But it was very much like, we're going to create some new designs, lots of them, and they're going to look like TOS Romulan era ships. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. They look a little bit janky, because they are, they're sort of like extended pylons.
It has that TOS design element where it's like, it kind of looks like shit, but it's part of the charm.
Yeah, it's cool, but it works. So yeah, definitely cool. Like, just how much are they throwing at this series? Like for who is the thoughtful person behind this is going, no, we're gonna get this right.
Speaking of effects budgets and stuff like that, that intro hero shot of the outpost where they kind of zoom out from it,
The two Constitution class starships.
Yeah, there's just so many little details on the way out. Plus,
I love the little solar panels and stuff like that. It's such a nice little touch.
Yeah, and it's all bright and busy and it serves that more of that quick visual language of you get to see enough of it and see it working well so that when it flips to the balance of terror and you see it destroyed, it's like that's a stark contrast too. So that's more economy of storytelling too. So it's not just a pretty shot; it serves a purpose.
And it perfectly merges with that 60s aesthetic as well. Like you put that in the 60s like thing and obviously I've updated the design is essentially the same. I'd be like, no, that looks like it's got that 60s style to it. Like it has that style to it without looking completely modern. Because there are occasionally things in this thing where it's like that's a modern concession. I understand why you had to do it, but like. More often than not, I look at it and go, that is a 60s design, but done with like 2022 technology and finish and love and a big budget.
Yeah. I think like absolutely every scene from this episode was just gorgeous. Like the when you've got the Farragut and the Enterprise shadowing.
Well,
I'm getting there. I was gonna say when you got like the Farragut and the Enterprise and they're following the asteroid and they're just like, and everything from the ship battle to when the asteroid explodes, apart from one scene which looks. My only complaint for the episode is
like
one
shit.
scene. It looks absolutely trash, and that's when the commander of the outpost gets wasted, and for some reason he does like about a triple backflip out of the airlock to some CGI smoke. For some reason, they could have just not included that and just gone, he's dead.
It would have been more horrifying. It would have been more horrifying if you just saw him go, bright light, gone.
You could have cut that straight into Sharknado, and it would have fit like a glove.
It was bad, really bad. But then it was followed up with the whole place exploding in such really really good detail and some utterly stunning CGI. Like,
it's like I don't know if someone just like they were on a tight budget, or if they spent too much money doing a Farragut design, or if they were like, no, I need to make the comet look so gorgeous, and I need to echo like the Mutara Nebula effect with like the flickering lights, but. Yeah. Someone on their day making that effect shot did not do a good job.
And then also someone in the editor's room should have been like, no.
I'm sorry you've taken 20 hours to render this, but that's what happens. Okay. Before we move on to the elephant in the room, which is going to be Kirk, two things I want to talk about. The first is Captain Patel returns, so quite happy to see her come back as Pike's occasional fuck buddy. I am very pissed off because in every scene she's in, she just leaves food. In the pilot, he cooked her these amazing waffles. She left them. In this series, she was just like spaghetti. She puts on the plate this amazing carbonara, and she just walks out like she's got no appreciation. Pike, you're too good for her. Like just leave her in the dust. The other thing. That's all we're gonna say about it. Other thing,
as Stars said, it's like that was your first clue that she's gonna make her heel turn at the end.
That's your foreshadowing. Yeah, it's like only a villain would leave spaghetti on the plate.
She just walks in, takes a bite, complains about it, and leaves. Like, come on, like, sorry, you weren't invited to the big ribs barbecue.
This is someone with no regard for life.
Second thing is, how do you feel about the counterbalance of Spock taking the big life-changing injury over Pike? Because obviously the implication is that Spock will be, if he survives, will be relegated to the wheelchair and doing the whole beep routine.
If that.
So brutal.
Okay, so it's devastating. I mean, you have, roughly 45 seconds to a minute to kind of know that something is coming, but you don't quite know what. While they do the absurd Captain Pike 2002 video camera, like it's like all of a sudden we're in a Puff Daddy video or something, and he's bebopping through sick bay, and it's like I understand why you make that choice, but it's jarring. It's one
of those things where a good director you can watch it, and occasionally they draw attention to a shot, but they don't draw attention to their style.
Yeah.
Whereas stuff like the hand cam and stuff like flipping upside down for Kirk's maneuver, like, I got what you were going for, but I felt like it was more in service of your style than of the scene. It's fine. It's just a bit goofy and takes me out of it a bit. That being said, it's just something about the scene that we have that goofy handheld camera moment, and then it cuts to Spock in that bio bed, and you just go, "Oh fuck!"
Yeah,
and it's bad. They don't hold back on it. It looks. He looks worse than he did in Wrath of Khan. I'm like, that. No, he can't
he's
recover
missing
from
limbs.
that. That's
Like, there's bits
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, it's something where with Wrath of Khan, it's like he looks like, especially since he's still standing at the outset of it and then kind of sings out. It's like, you know, I could see him coming back from this. You see him on that bio bed, it's like, I don't want him to come back from this because he is not going to be Spock anymore.
No.
If he
Chapel,
ever makes it off that bio bed at all.
Yeah, and Jess Bush, like, she only gets like a minute of screen time in this entire episode, and it's like, normally I'd be like, man, that sucks. I love Jess Bush, but fuck if she doesn't knock it out. Like, you hear the tone in her voice, and it's like she speaks for the audience. She speaks for Pike, who just he has this moment where he looks like he's about to start crying. Like, he literally, like, he's biting his lip. He looks up, and he cannot bear to look at Spock as he has been now. And, like, she, like Pike in the beginning, is just disassociating. And it's so heartbreaking to see, because we've been doing this song and dance, flirting, will they, won't they? Oh, they did, but it's only in this context. And then you cut to this, and it's like getting punched in the gut over and over again every time we show it.
Before we know, in this reality,
that
they had.
hurts.
Maybe it could have been like this. That could
Maybe,
have been the.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, it's so rough, and it's like that. It says something about how powerful that scene is, and how much you believe in it. Because even if this is your first exposure to Star Trek, you know immediately that Spock is special. Because, like, Ethan Peck's Spock is just so brave and smart and occasionally emotionally stupid, but his heart is always in the right place. He's loyal, he's dedicated, and he's dedicated to the Starfleet cause. And just to see him destroyed like that, even if you don't know what he goes on to do, even if you don't know about Nivar in Discovery Season 3, and you don't know about Romulan reunification, or the saving of Romulus in the 24th century, you know that this is a massive loss and that things are going to become so much worse because of it. And it's like, you do that in 60 seconds. Incredible. That's a real good economy of storytelling. Like, this finale is an hour long. It's the longest episode of the season. It didn't feel like it.
No.
Well, and just the single line from old Pike at the end is like, he's got things to do. And that tells the entire story of, look, him surviving is much more important.
Yeah.
And that needs to happen. I mean, it's
He's
kind
got
of
some
weird.
whales to mind meld with.
Yeah.
That one
He's
too.
got some marshes to melon.
Well, and I like the simplicity and the matter of factness of it, because read a different way that could have kind of a almost messianic kind of undertone to it.
Yeah.
But it's done so subtly that it tells you what you need to know, and it tells Pike what he needs to know without overemphasizing the point.
Yeah. And especially, like, they do such a good job with Spock's characterization here, because we get like maybe 5 seconds of him in the briefing, like he says like one or two lines. Then we cut to Balance of Terror, and it's a very different Spock. He's a little bit standoffish when he gets out of the chair for Pike. He calls himself number one over the intercom, which is a weird thing. You've never heard Spock ever call himself. And immediately signals for people who don't know. Say, oh yeah, now he's the first officer. Okay, cool. And there's just something so much about his delivery and about the way he's so much less emotional that anyone who had worries that it was Peck's acting ability. No, it's not the acting ability. It's straight up, he is acting the way he is because he is a younger, more immature, less emotionally put together Spock. And then we get to see him here, and it is a night and day difference, even though it's the exact same actor who literally walked off the set filming another scene where he was the younger version, and you're like, no, that's a different person, basically. And it's also really cool foreshadowing for his character growth over the next few seasons.
I feel like we're going to have the young and the old Spock standing next to each other. Like, I'm sure you can tell the difference between us, Captain, in our reflections. And then I'm sitting there as Pike just going, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And there's also one of the most overt homages to Balance of Terror is the Romulan appears on screen, looks Vulcan, everyone looks, which is hilarious. They play it so over the top, and it's wonderful. And he raises the eyebrow, and here's the thing: no one can do an eyebrow like Nimoy. And Peck doesn't. He's not been doing a lot of eyebrows this season, and I feel like it's an implicit choice of he doesn't need the eyebrow.
Are we saying we're missing the people's eyebrow?
A little bit. But it's like, think about how many times like Ethan Peck Spock actually does the whole the big showy. You know, he doesn't do it that often, and that's because he doesn't need to. Everything else about his character informs that this is Spock. Yeah. Everything else about his characterization and acting choices get it through, like, in terms of the choice of inflection and tone. That when it happens, you're like, yeah, that belongs to a different character. Where that was a bit more jarring, in like kind of a different way, was Ortegas.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Ortegas in this, and like people said, there's something that's happened between, say, what we know are in Strange New Worlds now and to what's now in this alternate future. Something's made her very bitter and taking the role of Dr. McCoy and being the kind of, hello, I'm the space racist, you know.
Well, Styles. Not really
Styles.
McCoy.
Well,
McCoy was never this explicit.
A bit of hybrid, wasn't she? She was sort of like the skeptical part of McCoy, but with the kind of aggressiveness of Styles in the episode in this regards. But yeah, I didn't gel with it. I only because I really like Melissa Navia quite a lot as Ortegas, and I really like Ortegas, that I don't want her to be a bad guy.
It's a credit to Melissa Navia's acting ability and performance that she executes what is asked of her in this episode, and she does exactly what it's meant to do. But here's a question: do we need that? Do we need that little thread in this episode to really make it work? Is that something that had to be carried through? I mean, yes, okay. I'll counterpoint off you guys. What do you think?
So I feel like it is an essential part of the original episode, and you do get shades of part of the themes of the original episode in terms of her, like, not quite racial, but like definitely like hard coded against the Romulans like thing, which is more where Styles had an explicit reason because of his family history and all that. And then it just kind of, like, I don't know, she has to speak for the aggressive element aboard the ship, because you've got Pike, who is not aggressive by nature. You've got Kirk, who is, in the context of this thing, an unknown element, and he doesn't really give his opinion. You've got Mitchell, who is, you know, I love her. She's a cool little side character who's gotten a lot more to do this first season than you would have thought. But her opinion kind of doesn't really matter. She doesn't really give it. You've got Mbenga, who is, as a doctor, is going to be on the side of compassion and of peace. Yeah. And then you've got Spock, who comes out with the surprise of "we should attack," and in order to preserve that moment of Spock saying "we should attack," which is something that is consistent and makes sense when you think of it in terms of brutal, savage logic, you need Ortegas for that context and for that. Because if she didn't exist and she wasn't having this moment of "fuck the Romulans, they've been pissing in our yard," Spock's "no, we should attack" doesn't have quite the same weight. Like, it would have some weight because Pike is advocating for peace, because that's the way he goes, but it needs that out of nowhere contrast of "we should attack." Yeah, no, we should. And they're like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to say that."
Well, I think more specifically what I was getting at, because yes, you do need that. That is. I mean the Romulans look like Spock, we should instantly start questioning Spock's loyalty kind of thing. It's like it's only given like 2 or 3 lines, but I don't know if that even that was necessary. It's like that seems more like a 1960s kind of thought and idea that didn't necessarily need to be carried forward into now.
I could definitely see that logic. No, you're not necessarily wrong.
It seemed to fill the part of like, this was in the episode, so we're going to recreate someone to do that, and that could have been Mitchell. I think that could have been Jenna Mitchell through that line, but she wasn't a main character, so it had to be Ortegas, I think, really, in that regard, which was a bit of a shame. But
I do think it does, because they do drop the racial aspect to it after the briefing room scene. Like, after Spock says, no, we should attack, it's like, you know, the whole... I love that. He said that delivery of, these are offshoots of my Vulcan blood, as I believe them to be. Like, he does that delivery great. After that, her doubts completely disappear, and it's more just about, no, we need to take care of the Romulans. She is not suspicious of Spock anymore. Whereas Styles in the episode, because I watched it literally like 2 days before the thing came, he's all the way up until Spock literally saves his life and the ship by going into that phase control room. He is still being a racist asshole. Whereas Ortegas, because she is a main character and presumably more enlightened and doesn't maybe have the same background that is making Styles act like this, pulls it back almost immediately. That being said, she doesn't pull back the attitude, but Pike snaps her back so hard that she'll feel like she's an Academy cadet. Like, she does Riker and Shelby. Like, he just gets... Well, there's another bit of that here, right? With that interplay of, like... Because you never see that. It's such a strong contrast versus season, and it does really underline, no, this situation is dire. This is not just, if we fail here, a planet's diplomatic relationships are going to get messed up and a few people will die. This is, we will be plunged into a 30-year war. And you need people acting out of character to underline that a little bit.
Well, and it's like, and you read it on Anson Mount's face when he delivers the line, the stand down, where it's like, I've never turned the volume up on this high before. What is this about?
I can do this more.
Yeah, I don't think he shouted that hard when that kid got killed in episode 6.
No, no, he just kicked some ass for a bit. Okay, because of time, let's talk about Paul Wesley's Kirk, and allow me to have a bit of time on this one, because when I first watched this episode, and everyone's eager to watch and see what Paul Wesley, what he brings to the Kirk dynamic, and what people expect from someone that plays Kirk. So obviously now we've had William Shatner, obviously, Chris Pine, and now Paul Wesley. What we were presented with was a very different Kirk, and I think a lot of people, sort of myself included, the first time I watched it, kind of went, oh, this feels a bit odd. And some of that can be explained by the fact that, yes, this is a separate timeline. This is a Kirk that hasn't been brought up with Spock and as much with Bones and things like that, hasn't had that experience on the early Enterprise to sort of experience character. But I'd like to sort of address some of the complaints I've seen in the community, say, well, he doesn't feel like Kirk because Kirk is brave and rash and he does things out of context. Well, rewatching, sort of like when I rewatched the original series a few years back, like, redefined what I thought of what Kirk is, and it's not the character kind of that is like, gotta talk.
He's not Zap Brannigan.
No, he's not Zap Brannigan that does all this. No, he's not that. He is very much militaristic. He's very sort of by the law. Like, he has those characteristic pauses, but he does have those sort of moments where he does dress people down. He has those moments where he is in authority. And when I first watched this episode, I was not feeling that with Paul Wesley, and I wasn't feeling the experience and the Kirkness that wasn't Kirkness. I think Chris Pine did it to an extent. By the time he got to Beyond, I think he managed to channel what Kirk was as in regards to the original series, and not necessarily what Shatner brought to it by the movie area. Yeah. But I didn't feel like any of that with Paul Wesley. However,
can I jump in for a second?
Go on. Yep.
I feel like it's almost an opposite issue where in the first two Kelvin movies, it's not Pine's performance, it's the writing.
Yeah.
Whereas in this episode, I feel like it is more a case of the writing and the characterization is good. It's more Paul Wesley's performance that is odd. And like you say, keep on going, because there are reasons for it.
There are. And so, like, the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, God, I'm not The first time I watched this, I wasn't entirely feeling Paul Wesley. I was just like, this feels like any other captain. It doesn't quite feel like it's a Kirk to me. And like I say, it's not because of like the stilted talking. It's not that, and it's not about the kind of what Sam Kirk says earlier in the episode about, you know, Kirk's rash and brave, and he's like, well, no, he's not. He's a military man. He takes risks because risks are our business. But I feel like, but the second time I watched it, when we watched it before this, there was a scene where Kirk confronts Pike after the Farragut is lost, and on the second time watching,
you hesitated.
That the whole scene. The second time I watched that, I kind of, with the eyes of like, now I kind of know what Kirk is and what Paul Wesley's bringing. I kind of went, this kind of does feel like Kirk. Like there's a little bit in there. Okay, he's not talking the same kind of mannerisms, but the attitude he presents and the way he deals with it through the writing kind of, yeah, I could see that gelling, that if we were to then finally meet Kirk of this timeline, say 7 years ahead, because that's the bullet point. People are looking at this Kirk to think, are we being judgmental of this Kirk? Because we're expecting them to kind of go, right, Pike's out, we're now going to do a TOS series. Like, that's what everyone is thinking. They're going to do TOS with Paul Wesley and Ethan Peck, and they're going to do a few episodes maybe before, and we're going to see Paul Wesley as Kirk. We're judging him already, and we're already sort of setting that precedent to think, like, we're expecting the series. Might not happen. Probably won't. We'll probably get Stranger Worlds till Anson Mount says, I'm done with this, and then they'll cut it, and we might not ever get a Paul Wesley Kirk. But there is that expectation. We're already pre-rambling to say, like, this is what we want, and that's my monologue done. That's my Kirk style.
No,
we've
been monopolizing it. So I feel like there is an important bit of context for this, and this is something that I've seen in the conversation. I think it was an interview with Henry Alonso Mayers and or Kiva Goldsman, who wrote on this episode. And they were talking about this is a Kirk who has not been in command of the Enterprise. He has never met Spock until this day. He is implicitly written differently to match with the situation he's in. And it's a case of this is a Kirk that has actually, when you think about it, he has had his one true love, the actual Enterprise, stolen from him. His moment of greatness, his first best destiny, has been stolen from him. That is another casualty of this thing, and that goes almost completely uncommented on. There is no meta narrative. Admiral Pike doesn't know that because he doesn't know what the normal timelines are meant to look like. So there is no one to point out that Kirk is acting a little bit differently, even though he is, because it's not about Kirk. It's about Pike versus Kirk in terms of command style. So it's one of these things where it's like, imagine your first exposure to Captain Picard was yesterday's Enterprise. An alternate timeline where things are worse and he is not the man he is meant to be because the situation around him has not allowed him to grow into the man he ultimately can be. Suddenly, it's a very different character who's a lot more limited. And Paul Wesley portrays that. I do think there is a little bit too much open-mouthedness, a little bit too much head-bobbing. It's just like, maybe it was because I was just watching him a little bit too attentively because I'm really aggressively judging this Kirk. Every time he's on screen, you're looking at him and judging what he's doing, and I feel like that's almost a really unfair thing to put on an actor.
Well, it's impossibly unfair because you're
absolutely
you're judging this person who has played this character exactly once against the face of the franchise.
Yeah,
basically. And it's a weird thing to kind of come to terms with, the fact that it seems to be more difficult to capture the essence and the spirit of Kirk than it is Spock, which I never would have guessed before I've seen it done so well. It's like, I mean, Zachary Quinto's Spock was perfectly well done, and I think had we not seen Ethan Peck's Spock, we would think, oh, that's a great modern day take on the character, the great modern day take on the character. And now we've seen Ethan Peck do it again. You can take your pick which one you like better. I think I prefer Ethan Peck's Spock at this point.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and it's an overused word, and I use it hesitantly, but this version of Kirk just lacks that swagger.
Yes.
That Kirkian swagger about him, to where he's the the biggest swinger in the room, not to use the whole.
He needs a little
term
smirk
there.
in his face. He needs to have that little smirk
Yeah.
and a little quippy comment before he gets down to business. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Well, and it's part of it is because he understands in this situation, and it's a different situation, that he is the clear number 2 decision maker in this situation. But I always felt that Kirk in TOS was not going to let someone else tell him what to do. He was going to take charge of whatever situation he found himself in.
We've never seen
Absolutely.
We've never seen a situation where, in any series ever, where Kirk is not in command of the situation. Like if he
is not in command of the other people in the room, like say like in Kelvin. Like think of that scene in the simulator room. Now I disagree with some elements of Kelvin Kirk's characterization because of the timeline changes, right? But he is in command of that room.
Yeah.
Even though like Quinto Spock is running the simulation, even though everyone else is partaking in this thing, he is in command of that situation. Even though he's just a cadet, he still has command, and that's what he like projects. And you're kind of right. Like Paul Wesley doesn't really have that because he can't, especially because Pike is in the situation, and Pike has this completely different aura of charisma and has been inured to the Watchers so much that you're like, well, if they try to make him too swaggery, he'd just come off as a dick. So instead, what they do is Instead, what they do, and I kind of appreciate this, is they characterize him as right. Yeah. And he is right in almost every call that he makes.
He's only right, though. He's only right because we know he is. Like, if we didn't have the Balance of Terror as a background, would we think, he's taken too many risks? Would we think Pike was the right one, but it led to unforeseen circumstances? Like, we know he's right because we've seen it happen.
You were talking about before, it's like, people watching this uninitiated to TOS and Balance of Terror. It's like, how does that play out? Well, it's really not supposed to play out that way. This story works because it kind of assumes that you have the prerequisite of watching the episode that it's referencing. I made the decision, and I still haven't. I did not go back and watch Balance of Terror around this.
I did.
I'm relying on my legacy knowledge of the episode to kind of get me through. But and the episode makes it clear too, like you say, they cast Kirk as right. And it's like, yes, you can't in that situation like know in advance that all of his decisions are going to be right, whatever. But the episode tells you that they are. And that's the point. It tells you that Kirk's decisions were right. Kirk is the man for this situation. And because you put yourself there of your own volition, because you wanted to save yourself from your fate, this is the consequence. And that's
absolutely, yeah. And it's also a case of some of those other elements come together in terms of like the by the bookness, like when they say, so should we go into the neutral zone and get aggressive with them? It's like, well, no, Captain Pike is correct. We should not be overly aggressive because of the terms of the treaty, but we'll still do the shadowing plan. Still taking risks, but with that by the book approach to it. And that's why I think this version of Kirk, he's probably way stronger. By the book, Mr. Savick. The characterization is so much stronger on the page, and I feel like Paul Wesley is almost being held back by the situation that he's in, and I am more than willing to give him another shot.
Oh yeah,
I'm really interested to see what the characterization is going to be like, and are we going to get to see Kirk and Spock meet for the very first time? What is his relationship with Lon going to be like? Because we've seen shots of them together. Considering she's his executive officer in this other timeline.
Yeah.
What is this Kirk like when he's being funny?
That's it.
Kirk is a really funny character.
I need to see that charm. I need to see the swagger. I need to see off-duty little cheeky smirk on his face. He's sort of like poking someone.
I need to see him womanize a little bit because all due respect to Garrett Wong, but I'm sorry, Kirk is a.
Well, he is, but maybe we can give it at it.
Guess what? There's womanizing in your Sean Connery man talk smacks a woman's bum versus the I'm actually just that naturally charming and charismatic, and I'm not looking to get myself away. But if it happens, I'm going to be happy to see it. And I feel like that second one, that's something that Kirk is if you take the characterization as on the page, as how it is. He is a man who is free with his affections because that's what he believes in. Yeah. Because the Federation is like that. You can have sexual relationships, whatever you want, as long as you do it responsibly and you don't do it stupidly.
I
think that's an element of his character that's fine to retain as long as you do it well.
I think with this Paul Wesley Kirk, we need to have that moment where he has the big speech. We need to have that character-defining moment. We need to have that moment where he takes command of a situation, where he has the authority to pull off what Kirk would do in a reasonable manner that would send everyone to kind of going, wow, yeah, that works. The situation resolves itself. And then he has a cheeky little smirk with McCoy at the end and just goes, and you get that little music at the end, and like everyone smiles, and the episode ends, and we go off to an advert break.
Yeah. So one also thing that I think, and you were talking about it in terms of why is it so much harder to cast a good good Kirk versus a good Spock, and I feel like part of the problem, and we were talking about this in relation to the conversation we have with Sam Kirk, is that Kirk has a really weird characterization in terms of if you add up everything that we know about his backstory and what they say about him versus what he's like, it's kind of a contradictory character. So, like, as a child, he witnessed the Tarsus 4 massacre, which they name check. His father is a tried and true Starfleet officer. He's gone through all these different things.
They mention it. They say served on the Kelvin. So
they do.
Happy they did that.
By this point, he has gone through the Dicronium cloud creature massacre on the Farragut. Also,
has he?
Yeah, that was 2257. That was 2 years ago.
Oh,
like 9 years ago by the time of the Balance of Terror thing.
Yeah,
so by the time we meet him
wow.
in season 2, that will have happened. That'll be recent. And then there's like reconciling, oh, you were a big old pile of books at the academy. You were an instructor. You got bullied by Finnegan and whatever, you know? Versus God.
Yeah, if we could forget Finnegan, that'd be great.
Well,
how you doing there, Jimbo lad? Let's have a fight now.
Versus, I don't like to lose. I got a commendation for original thinking for cheating on a simulation test. Like, these are kind of contradictory elements of the same character, and I don't envy trying to marry all of these aspects of the character on top of all the pop culture baggage in one episode when you're not even the focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and where you're not exactly that character because of the divergence in the timeline.
Yeah.
So, well, and it's also a fine line because I feel like almost doing a Leonard Nimoy Spock homage is an easier thing to accomplish because most of it is pretty subtle. It's pretty down key, and that the as you say, the cultural baggage of the Captain Kirk William Shatner impression is so embedded in
because that's the other thing. It's like on the flip side, Spock is so much more consistently characterized and written because Leonard Nimoy has so much more of an active say in what that character was like, whereas Shatner kind of had a degree of control over what he was doing, but more often than not, he was happy to come and walk on the set and say all the lines he was given. So that contradictory element plays out way more.
There's two main sort of like cultural touchstones for like what people think Shatner is. The first one's obviously Zap Brannigan from Futurama, which really sort of spread it out there. But the second one is if you ever watch it, go watch the In Living Color sketch with Jim Carrey as Captain Kirk, which really kind of didn't help the sort of like kind of. It's always that kind of. I actually genuinely think this is a misconception of what Kirk is from what you go watching TOS and you can't, especially the Troubles and Tribbles when he's dressing down Scotty and sort of goes that levity between telling him off and sort of the statute and then sort of having a sly little sort of nod saying like go read manuals in your quarters. Like I feel like there is a cultural misunderstanding versus what Paul Wesley is giving that maybe he could kind of unify a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like we just need to. Oh no, you go.
Well, I was gonna say I expect he plans to, and this was just an aside to what he eventually plans to do with the character.
Hopefully,
and it's also. I feel like it's a smart move that Pike is going to retain this knowledge. Like, think about this, right? When Pike goes back to 2259, he is the only person in the entire Federation who knows what a Romulan looks like.
Yes.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, actually, I didn't think of that.
He is burdened with so much future knowledge now. Pike knows more about the future than almost anyone else in the entire Federation. That's
makes
crazy to think about.
So, okay, let's move on to the section, like, what next? Like, the ultimate question is, and this has been on a few fan sites as well, like, are they gonna get Pike to escape his fate? Like, obviously, him getting blown up and saving the cadets, that's gonna happen. Him ending up in the wheelchair is gonna happen. Him going to Talos 4 and being sort of holographically recreated by the Talosians in a form where he can spend life with Vina is going to happen. But do you think there is a hopeful part of that may end up with him coming out of that? Because they kind of seem to be setting up all this, the premonition of time. The premonition of what's the word for premonition if it's in the future, or like. Oh no, that is a premonition. Yeah, that is a premonition. Like all these premonitions of like his life to be that have been alluded in the series when they didn't have to. They could have made it a kind of like, haha, here's a nod to just the viewer. No, they've outright said that this is your fate. Are they going to sort of work their way around it? And I think that's the real question, because it's been there the whole time.
Here's the thing. It's telling, and we don't know what it's telling for, that the Klingons showed Pike his fate up to the accident and the result of the accident. But he didn't die, and they didn't show him what happened beyond that. Yes. Why would they make that choice? Why would they leave him in the despair and existential dread of knowing only up to that point in his future without any idea of redemption or that your life is not, you will be able to experience the rest of your life in a state that is not exactly the state that we just showed you? Why would they withhold that information?
Yeah, I've been sort of curious as to how much he knows about if he's going to get to Talos 4 or not. In reference to the point, I think it's a case of specifically showing him the accident and making him experience it, because he, like you said, Idle, he experiences it as well as knows about it. It's a test of character. Like in the moment, and it comes from Discovery Season 2, it's explicitly a test of character to make sure that you don't take this lightly. But I do wonder how much he knows, and they haven't, they do some stuff in Discovery Season 2 to make the menagerie ending seem a little bit nicer, where it's like, no, Vina seems like someone who does genuinely care for him and will give him a good life. But it's a case of that tension of that being said, I don't know. I feel like the episode is very explicit. Stop dodging it. Everyone has their date with death. Yeah. You have to just accept it. You can't cheat death forever. It's literally, we keep on bringing back Ralph Picard, but that's because it has so much to say about the human condition. It's I've never cheated death. I've never faced death, not like this. And it's like Pike is dealing with that in his own way. Well,
oh wait, that's Final Fantasy. Sorry.
Why are you doing this?
This reads to me a lot the way that the end of Elysian Kingdom read to me, as far as the resolution of that arc. It's like, this is written to me to be, okay, we're going to put a bow on this for an indeterminate amount of time. Like, this was the resolution of Pike coming to terms with his fate again. And that, yes, you could make different choices, but now you see what that will do. So let's just forget about that. And now, especially because of the thing that happens at the very, very end of the episode, he's got other fish to fry now. And so I think that's going to be where the main focus is. And it may come back again, but I think that this is going to be the end of Pike's ultimate fate as a going concern for a while.
Same. What I think is, it's really interesting because with all the thematic links, and especially the link back to episode 1 that you pointed out, Idle, this is essentially Pike's season, right? It's his story arc. There are elements of his story arc that keep on popping up in almost every episode, with the exception of one or two. I don't think it really played into Elysian Kingdom or anything like that, but that was a Moonbang episode. But I'd say the majority of the episodes deal with that, and as you say, we've put a bow on it. He has come to as happy as he can be place about it. And now
piece.
I'm wondering, a piece, exactly, like not what you'd hoped, but it's what you have to live with. And I'm wondering, does that mean season 2 is Una's season? Like, is that how we're doing it instead of just episodes?
Lord,
Is
I
it
hope
an
so.
entire season where it's like everything ties back thematically to that one character?
Yeah.
And if so, that's awesome. That's a really cool way to structure your show. Where I never felt that. Maybe Ortega's got shortchanged. She didn't get a proper focus episode, but she was in everything and got to do stuff. But like Mbenga, Uhura, Spock, they all got their focus episodes, and I never felt they got shortchanged. But Pike was still the focus. If we can shift that so that it becomes way more about Una in season 2, that'll be really cool in terms of what it does to the show and how it changes the tone.
This sounds like something that this sounds like something we need to talk about in our season 1 recap episode, which we'll be doing soon.
Yes, but I have to ask a question.
Go on.
Who do you think snitched?
Lon.
What do you mean?
Really? You think Lon would snitch?
Oh shit, on Una.
On Una?
Yeah, yes. Oh,
who told them?
No, it wouldn't be Lan. No, not a chance. No, she wouldn't. She's a best friend. Literally.
Just my head canon idea. Well, she didn't know what Una was until, episode 3. Yeah. And she was still coming to terms with that. And she lived a life of being associated with the negative consequences of genetic engineering and having to live with the biases of people that come in contact with something like that. So I don't know. That's just a shot in the dark. But I just think that there has been no other reason to have the last name that it has. Other than that,
that's not resolved. It's interesting. Like they just kind of threw it out there.
They're just leaving it on the table. They're leaving it on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, if I was to say who's to snitch, and I think this might be, I think it was Chapel. I think.
Really?
Well, she's got no interaction.
This is what I love about this. You could say anyone's name, and I'd be like,
she's had no real interaction with Una. She is still, as cavalier as she is, she's bound by medical profession. She's probably got the same medical access that Mbenga has, so she's seen... Like, Mbenga, I don't think it would be Mbenga, because, like, she did him a solid with her daughter.
They're tight.
They're. She did him a solid with that thing. So I think Una's probably looked through it, gone, like, put 2 and 2 together. Chapel's gone through it, put 2 and 2 together, and, like, gone... I should probably report this, because she's not entirely solid with apart from Spock, who she's just all eyes over, like, she's not really a part of the crew yet. She's the civilian exchange, so I'm wondering if it's her. And
I'm going to have to torpedo you,
it would kill me
Ivor.
if it was, because I'm literally Jess Bush's biggest fan at the
moment.
moment.
Well, I can reassure you it's not Chapel, because you're forgetting some key points of dialogue from episode 3. Namely, I know there are regs against mixing Federation and Illyrian blood, but I couldn't care less.
Okay. I'm kind of repeating.
She straight up knows.
Okay, fine.
But
fine.
And then going back to my Lon theory, it's like maybe that was a secondary plot reason that they needed to get her off the ship the episode before.
Well,
that'd be that's the thing. I'm coming from this point of like I can see it, but it would cause such a painful character drama that I don't want it to be. Maybe it was Ensign Christina, that little snitch.
Yeah. Sure to be trying to Enterprise bingo. Her and her Bolian friend.
She wants revenge for the Enterprise bingo. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Or it was Chief Kyle. It was Kyle all along.
He's so
He's
mean.
seen the transporter buffers.
So
he knows. He's been through the filters. He's seen the irregularities. He knows.
I feel like the most natural, the most obvious one, and the one that would get away with least character drama is they looked at the logs about the light plague. They noticed some things weren't adding up, and they looked into it deeper. And then it
was Una herself. She turned herself in through the guilt. I can see that. That's why she
wanted to do it for the drama.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you will confront me.
Look, I'm not getting any other character arcs. I got to make this happen on my own.
I'm going to steal the show focus.
Yes.
You have to search for me in the next season. That's the thing. It's such a juicy plot thread. And I remember when we did the watch through for episode 3, Big, you said this is a really cool character arc that we know doesn't get resolved by Bashir's time when it next pops up.
Yeah.
But will it come back? And boy, has it come back. It's come back with a vengeance. Um,
And it's come back with.
I'm curious how.
For a person that doesn't like to, finish their meals, she sure does like to finish everyone else's meals, and that's Captain Patel.
I eat your milkshake, I drink it
Sorry,
up.
I have a thing about wasting food in my house. If any of my boys leaves food on the table, like, no, you're eating it up. We're not wasting food here.
I think Pike can consider that an RSVP no for the Asabuco.
Damn.
All right.
There'll just be an empty place with like a food, and he's like, "Yeah, not for Captain Patel."
Yes. We're allowed one. Okay. What's our rating?
Well, I was going to say one other thing.
Go on.
Lan looked great in gold.
Oh, she did.
And I really appreciate that as a subtle little nod of we're going to be heading in this sort of direction. This is a possible future for her for season 2.
I can totally see it for a character arc of hers through this season, just for the one season, like her going towards command with Pike tutoring her for her, looking after Uhura and other things as well, and her dealing with her own issues with the Gorn, her going up the command track. Completely logical. I love it. Like, I think that'd be great. I could see her as a captain one day. Like, yeah, give me that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love it. And it's a really nice little subtle nod at season 2. So, how many Vulcan deaths by democracy out of 10 would you give this give this episode?
I haven't actually thought of this.
Yeah, I've not really given it thought to give it a number. Because
it's a really strong episode, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I'm at a 9. I think I'm there. I think
you're at 9 Vulcan deaths by democracy.
I am hesitant because of Kirk, and also a few little dodgy CG bits, a few little dodgy directorial things with the camera angles. Storyline wise, is stunning. Like, it's
impeccable. Yeah,
it's there from the moment you get like alternate Pike coming through, teaching a lesson about the past, to the juxtaposition about the two different command styles, to where Pike could be wrong. Yeah, it's just great. It's just so good, and it feels. Yeah. I hate to say like it feels Trek, like, because it's like, what is the bar of a Trek these days? Like, there isn't really anything. It could be anything from like In the Pale Moonlight.
Literally remaking another episode of Star Trek.
It is, but it
can't get much more Trek than that.
It works. Like, it was something I didn't expect.
The best version of Shades of Grey ever.
Yeah, that's the next remake. That's the end. Hey, we haven't got to the season 2 finale yet. I fucking dare you to go back to Serata 4. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think I'm at a 9 too, just because it resolved so many things, and it did it in a way that I was not expecting. It really, like I said, closed the loop on the Pike story sooner than I was expecting, and more completely than I was expecting. Yeah. And then also, paying homage to some of the best aspects of TOS, which, that's what a lot of this has really been about. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of the same concerns. I think the way that they used like Ortegas was, I mean, I see why you did it, but I don't think it was as necessary as they thought it should be. And also just like you could have given that to another character. But and things like that. And we're still very much giving an incomplete grade to the Paul Wesley Kirk. We don't know what it's really going to be yet. Yeah.
Pending, yeah.
Yeah. So, I would say a 9.
Definitely.
I'm going to have to go for 9 Vulcan deaths by democracy out of 10 for this one, because, as you say, the thing is with Paul Wesley is that the performance was like, we've talked about it, it's like a little bit distracting in places. I was constantly paying attention to it because of the nature of the thing. But the writing was so good for him. It was such a eminently... If you take it just on what is written, I think he's a very good version of Kirk. He's just missing some of that performance elements.
Yeah,
I'm willing to pen
like I said before,
on that.
Everything but that scene where he confronts Pike in his quarters when he comes in and goes, "You made the wrong choice." Like, everything, that was a great Kirk scene, but everything else was a bit like, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah, it's a case of I'm,
and I don't know what I was looking for. Like, that's the thing. I'm watching him intently, and I'm not sure what I'm looking for here. But the way that Chris Pine, I managed to kind of go, yeah, okay, fine, I'll let him have a pass. But this one, I'm a bit more critical, and I don't know why. So,
No, absolutely. It is one of those things where we're going to have to revisit this once we get our first few. I'm wondering if we're going to get a Kirk focus episode next season, and I'm kind of interested to see if what that will go with.
It'll go the other way.
But
and we're here on the planet. He'll go completely the other way and lean into the spoof and be like, "No, why?"
He's like, "You wanted this. You said I should do this."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, opinion pending. I'm willing to give him a shot. They have not steered us wrong on a single casting choice yet. Every single person they have picked has paid homage to the original without being an impression. They have shown that they can do those lines just their own way and put their own spin on it while also retaining the essential essence of the character. And then they can bring us a brand new characters who we fall in love with over the course of 9 episodes, some of which they weren't even in, kill them off, and we're like, "Fuck you, how dare you!" Because we love them so much.
It just reminded me about Hemmer. I'd forgotten about Hemmer, and now you remind me.
Yeah, no, you had. I'm willing to give them a shot on. They've not messed us around so far. Roll on season 2.
Yeah,
9 out of 10 for me. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, yeah, a bit longer than our usual episode, but obviously finale. Why not? We will be doing a season 1 recap because I think this whole thing needs a good talking about. It needs a thorough investigation because this has been stunning. And we'll go over that. Keep an eye out. We'll be doing that in a week or so. So
it was so upsetting waking up the other day and realizing I didn't have a new episode to watch.
I know. Oh, it's like wake up in the morning. I need more Anson Mount in my life. Oh, never mind. back to Twitter.
No, don't go there. That's a silly place.
Yeah, we'll be back. Keep an eye on the channel for I think in about a week or so. We're planning to do it if schedules demand it, because obviously we're a week late with this one because we can quite align. But yes, look out for that one and all our usual rubbish. But this has been good fun.
And also,
go on.
If we are planning, if you are going to have withdrawal symptoms like we're having, we may well be doing a Discovery Season 4 series like this, because neither myself or Big have watched it, and I was game for a rewatch.
No. I'm excited to rewatch it as well, so I might try and rewatch season 3.
So watch the space.
Well. Yeah, we'll do more reviews. This is kind of our first review season, and I think it's worked really well. I'm quite happy about this. So yeah, I'm excited to go through.
Yeah, I like it.
We'll do some other things. I think at some point as well, we're going to get on with Shy and do some classic episode reviews as well. So we'll get on with that. But from myself and the guys, we'll see you very soon. Live long and ta-ra.